Malaysia. Also come from the first piece of land that was owned by freed slaves in Tennessee, so from Hood Creek. One thing I'll say while I've got the mic in my hand is that at the moment I'm writing my thesis, my honours thesis, and I'm actually starting work on the African American diaspora in literature, which is not being covered currently. If anyone is interested or has any input to that type of work, I'm more than interested to hear about it because I think it's a community-based work and it's very much bringing the voice of community from community. So talking about it and putting the black subject at the centre of narrative, which is something which is what we're working on, is paying homage to the fact that the Australian narrative has been exclusive rather than inclusive. So, given the fact that there were African Americans and African diaspora on the first fleet in the first place, and that has never actually been spoken about, the fact that our people have been on this land since the beginning of colonisation and before. That's right. So there were coins found from Africa by the Kilwa Sultanate in Northern Territory, which goes back to medieval times. So I'm working on changing narrative. So I want y'all to join me. Yeah, so I'm really, really psyched to keep on doing this.
Absolutely.
Hola, I'm Lucy Kay, and I am extremely grateful to have a beautiful, amazing, supportive people around me that are consistently bringing us all together. So thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Anna Brown. I'm from the Caribbean island of Trinidad and Tobago. I just want to say that I'm really happy that this group exists because it just helps you to be able to integrate because I recently moved here about 3 months ago, and I've been to a number of events where I've been able to meet a lot of people coming from the Caribbean, and I know my history of slavery, and I know that slavery was abolished, but being able to integrate with people from varying backgrounds since I've been here has taught me a lot. So I'm really excited to get to meet a lot of people from different backgrounds as well, so that I can also learn a lot more about my history and where my ancestors are from.
Yay, nice, thank you.
Hi, my name is Val, and I'm from Uganda. I've been in Australia for 4 years, but I find that having communities like this actually help you do life in Australia where you don't have family or, So yeah, I'm grateful for these groups.
Awesome. Guys, come in.
I won't hold the mic because I've got a cold. But my name's Jackie and I'm from the west of England. I have been in Australia for 15, 16 years. The best way to get black people together is to have a Jill Scott concert.
Hey! Jackie!
Where are you?
The mic.
And I'm here. Lovely enough. I have no idea what this whole day is about, but I'm
Right.
Thank you.
I'm Lauren. I'm just someone who works for the Melbourne. I'm very, very interested in Indigenous cultures. And to your question about African involvement in Australia, part of my thesis was on William Meyer, who you may or may not know, but he was a Jewish German guy who came out to Nigeria to self-determination process. And he introduced all sorts of wonderful self-determination gems, as well as launching Black Orpheus, which was the first magazine. You know what? His wife lives in Allendale still.
Wow.
And all his archive are actually in the Bayris Museum in Germany and also the National Museum in Canberra, so she can help you if you want to talk to me about that later. But what particularly interested me in the research that I did, which I'll share with you, is that the cause of self-determination in Australia is incredibly advanced by the work of this guy whose influences were those from Africa. What he learned from the African self-determination process that he taught within the university in Nigeria, he brought to Australia and was the main consultant to the soon-to-be formed Aboriginal Art School in 1969. So there is a really strong tradition from the self-determination of Australian culture, Aboriginal culture, that came out of Africa. And his ideas were derived from Senghor and other black activists who were colonial experience, people trying to find how to find their voice after significant disempowerment and violence of European cultures. Sorry to have gone on so long, but I just thought it's important for people to understand that Indigenous Australia has a deep connection to, through this particular academic anyway, Africa.
Hi everyone, I'm Kaya. This is my son Charlie. I am a student at Sydney University and I am interested in also writing a thesis. And my research looks at the intersections between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and the relationship to the global African diaspora. My mum's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, and my father's Ghanaian from West Africa.
I read your article.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and I quoted it in my proposal.
Oh, thank you. So, moving between those two communities growing up my whole life, I've always been sort of perplexed and interested, and the narrative about blackness in Australia didn't resonate with me about, we're disadvantaged and disempowered. It was a very opposite experience for me. So I also wanted to look at changing that narrative and looking at the resilient elements of our communities and how they were always intersecting and interconnected and from a cultural basis, the philosophical basis in which we create our institutions and our ways of being and our value systems. There are always those lines of connection, and I was also interested in this idea of the black oceanic indigenous cultures that connect us all. That's all I'll say for now. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Fantastic. Awesome. Okay, our speakers have arrived. So we're gonna get started. So I will take a seat. Does everybody have a seat? Yeah. Okay, great. So ladies, we just went around the room and shared, who we are and kind of where we're from. But a very important part of this is to hear from you. You have before you some extraordinary women that have really ignited the landscape, I think, of Australia since they arrived. And each and every one of them are trailblazers in their own right. So essentially, how this panel is going to go today is I'm going to step to the side for a little bit, and I'm going to allow them to share a little bit about their history and where they're from and what they've done. And if I were you, I'd take pictures. And they'll stick around afterwards for autographs because to me they are superstars. And then I'm going to ask them a couple questions and give them a chance to respond to those. And then I'm going to open it up for a dialogue and a discussion. So if you guys have any questions, you can, ask them. And we'll just kind of take it from there, yeah? So this is a dialogue, guys. This is a give and take process. And I really hope that we get a lot out of it. So I'll just let them introduce themselves because I don't think I can do any justice. So I'll start with Sienna. Well, I'll start with Anne. Yes.
Okay, so I'm a storyteller. Griots have a long history, but I'm just not musical, so I just talk. So you'll have maybe a time, a wind-up time, so I don't go too long. Yeah. I don't get started till 10 minutes. Now, my family comes from Texas. My grandmother's grandmother, Winnie, who was born in Tennessee, was sold to a plantation, the Rawlins Plantation in Mississippi. Her husband, who was born in Connecticut, his name was Jim, he was also sold to the Rawlins Plantation. They got together and got married. Well, they jumped the girl because we weren't allowed to marry back then. Winnie had 3 kids. Toe Perkins, who was my ancestor, Mary Rawlins, and Wash Rawlins. He was George Washington Rawlins. And you could guess by the name who was the father. Anybody want to guess? On the Rawlins plantation, these Rawlins kids? Okay. Winnie and her 3 kids were gifted to the daughter of the plantation owner. She got married and she was going to go off to Texas and start a new life. So they gave her servants, a woman and her 3 children. Jim wasn't happy about that. And so, because his wife was gone, he couldn't be without her, one night he slipped away. He ran away. He had to avoid the slave catchers, who would also look for a bonus if they caught some slaves. He had to look out for their dogs, just like we do today on train stations. He had to cross 3 state lines. He traveled over 400 miles. He had to swim 4 rivers, including the Mississippi. But he got to her. He found Winnie. She was down at the spring getting water for the master. And he had gone from plantation to plantation, talking to the slaves, asking if anybody had seen a woman who fit this description with these 3 kids. And he found her. So she hid him. She brought him food, and they hid together until she was able to talk to her new owner, the Reverend Dr. David Ford. He was a minister, and when he talked him into buying Jim. Now Jim had choice there. He could keep going. He was free. He could keep going north and be free. He could keep going west and be free. But he wanted to be with the woman he loved. So he voluntarily went back into slavery to stay with her. They worked hard. Finally, Juneteeth came along, and you'll hear about Juneteeth from everybody. I'm not going to talk about the thing, because I can tell you about this one family. So they took their money, and they bought land. They bought 9,000 acres, including in the spring that he found. I know because I was there. The shirt says Shankleville. Shankleville is the town. 150 years. They celebrated in 2017. So I went for that. So anyhow, that's Shankleville, 150 years, and it says, because they were, we are. So now they start Shankleville. Well, Mary's a guy called, what's his surname? Stephen McBride. Now Stephen McBride looked white, as a lot of them did, because of their heritage. And so he became the front man for them. He would go out and buy stuff, because they wouldn't sell it to black people. And he ended up having a grist mill, a lumber mill, a flour mill, a syrup mill, and also because he never learned to read or write, 3 schools he established, including one that was known as a normal school. That was like primary school, secondary school, and then the normal school was like a TAFE, teacher's college. They're buried in that cemetery there. I've been to visit. But they had a big problem because once they were freed and they built their town, white people didn't like that. They didn't like the idea of prosperous black people. They did everything they could to make sure they weren't. And the Klan rose. The White House, this isn't the first time there's been a racist in the White House. Birth of a Nation premiered in the White House. The Klan had over 2 million members, card-carrying members. And one night, they went to visit. See, our family believes in education, so I didn't tell you, there were 8 kids in that family. 7 women, 7 girls, and 1 boy. And the father died when my grandmother was 7. Her mother had died when she was 18 months old. But in the family tradition is look after your family. So the oldest brother, the only boy, went to work and supported his sisters, put them all through teacher's college. Aunt Regina was the oldest. She was the first one to go out and teach. And she had a evening where somebody came banging on her door, and she looked out, and there was a whole bunch of people wearing these white outfits, sort of hooded things. So she knew the Klan had come. They were going around killing light-skinned blacks, like they were trying to erase what they'd done. And she said to them, you know, please, I'm the new colored school teacher. I don't want any trouble. Please leave me alone. Well, they started banging on their door, kicking on their door, and they told her that if you don't open this door, we're going to kick it in. And she informed them that if they did kick in her door, it would be the last thing they ever did. They did. It was. She killed one. She blew the leg off another one. And that night, Aunt Regina left Texas, California. She was the first of our family to migrate. Because my family had been trained in Texas, they couldn't use their skills in California. They couldn't teach them. But the commitment to community was so strong that every Sunday there would be people on their porch and they'd be teaching them how to read and write. My grandmother would be teaching the women how to sew. She'd be teaching them how to do first aid. And Granddad, he'd be with the guys. He started the first Democratic Party office in Watts. You see, up at that time, all the blacks voted for the party of Lincoln, the Republicans, because he freed the slaves. But Granddad knew that this new Republican candidate was for lynching, and too many black people were being lynched. By now, prosperous towns all over America that were black-owned and populated were under siege and being killed, burnt out. So he did his best. But he died, and my mother went to work because that was the family tradition and made sure that her family was looked after. I'm squeezing a lot of this together, guys, so we find you'll know. When I went back to Shankleville, it was a privilege to go back and to drink from the spring where my great-great-greats had drunk, to see their tombstones and see those barely legible dates. But also because they still carry out the traditions, and there's a Shankleville scholarship for any kid who's what's that word? Relative of, descendant. A descendant. So there's and I was there to see the kids who got the scholarships the year that I was there. My mom's rules were look good, learn lots, and look out for others. Now, our work ethic was very strong, always was strong. We weren't afraid to go out. And I'll just give you a quick summary of the descendants. I have a whole article here. If anybody wants actual detail, you can have this. Yeah, I need this page, the last page there. The last. Okay, I'm not going to tell you all the names. Okay, first one is musician-songwriter, first female African-American member of ASCAP. Next one, Michael Strong, NFL Pro Football Hall of Fame, 7 times Pro Bowl, New York Giants. Steve Odom, NFL football player, Green Bay Packers. Harold Odom, storyteller, like me. Alex Holly, TV journalist and anchor. Asa Grant Hillard III, educational psychologist, professor, founder of the National Black Child Development Institute. Husband of Patsy Jo Hillard, the first African American and first female mayor of the East Point, Georgia. Me. Larutha Odom Clay, first black member, along with her 2 daughters, of the Daughters of the Republic of Texas. That upset a few people. We got some black members. Kenny Perkins, in basketball, so NBL pro basketball player. He actually played in New Zealand. Kendrick Perkins, who's NBA with the Celtics. David Riggins, mayor of Vinton, Louisiana, another pro basketball player, another first African-American elected to the Newton County School Board, as well as first black Newton County. What I'm saying is, there is a tradition. You help yourself, you get the job done. You make sure that you're focused, and you don't stop until you get there.
That's right.
So that's my family. And that's us.
So everybody can hear me. I have a little cold, but my name is Francine. Well, I was born Francine Barker, and then I became Francine Barker Hudson, first husband, Francine Barker Epstein, second husband, Francine Barker, third husband, Foley. But everyone calls me Francesca Emerson because that was the name that when I started out in New York, because I was born and raised in Harlem. So I use the name, my plume name, Francesca Emerson. And so I was asked, I feel very honored to be here, and that I was asked to speak about Juneteenth. And I thought it was quite interesting for me because growing up as a Black American in New York and Los Angeles, I knew nothing about Juneteenth until I moved to Alabama. I have a house in Alabama. And that was my first time to know about this holiday, because when I was going to school in the 50s and 60s, this was not a subject that was taught. And so we didn't know anything about it. And so I always loved Andy because she had a real connection coming from Texas, and my family from Texas, so she could tell you that story. And I grew up not really knowing too much about my history or my ancestry. So I finally had my DNA done, and then I found out that I was from Cameroon.
Ooh.
And Togo, and oh, we are, okay, and Benin. So I'm very excited about knowing my heritage. But getting back to Juneteenth, I grew up in Harlem, where, or the Lower East Side also, where I grew up with people from Chinese, Polish, Irish, Greek. So we were international diverse city, peoples on Atlantic Avenue and on Canal Street on the Lower East Side. So I really didn't get too much racism directly at me, and growing up and moving to Hollywood, into California. I married a Jew, so I didn't get much of that because mainly, as all my friends would say, well, you just hung out with all those white folks. But I never thought in terms of color, and I still don't. And when I came to Australia for the first time, I was totally welcome. Being, of course, a Black American, they just love us here, so I never truly had any problems. And I was just telling Dr. Vanessa that my first trip to Darwin about 3 years ago, when I got off that airplane and I saw all those Black people, I was like thrilled. Like, oh my God, I thought I was in a different country. from coming from Sydney there, and everyone would call me Auntie. And I just felt so part of the community. I felt embraced by them, and I feel that people ask me, well, where do you feel you belong? You know, are you American or are you Australian? I said, I belong where I'm at. My home is in my heart. And wherever I go, that's where I take myself and my body. And I embrace myself with people who I meet. And particularly when I laugh about it, because when I see a black person in Australia, I'm in the street, hey, how are you? Where are you from? You know? And so I talk to everybody because I'm in the moment. And I actually read up on Juneteeth, and I learned a lot. And I feel really sad that I did not embrace this as a child, that we were not allowed to, that we didn't know about it. So now I'm ready to go back to Selma, Alabama in September, and to embrace my neighbors and family and friends. Thank you.
Nice.
I'm Carol Johnson, and I don't know if you've already done it, but I'd just like to acknowledge the original people, indigenous people whose land we're on. I believe it might be the Aora, I'm not exactly sure.
Yes, Gadigal.
And I think that's very important. I also think of the 45 years that I've been here, I've learned a lot by being in Australia. And I actually think it's the responsibility of the African Americans here to learn as much as possible about the movement that occurred here, that occurred as part of the international decolonization, and also as part of decolonization that's happening around the world, including the civil rights movement of the United States, because the people here were also studying and learning, and there were black people here, mostly Africans, West Indians, few African Americans, from the early 1900s. In fact, Jack Johnson was here. And before he left, there was a big group, and it was here in Sydney, and it also included Aboriginal or Indigenous Australians. The Indigenous Australians who were working on the wars had opportunity to learn and hear. And the information about, there was a black breakdown happening from those early days. And the information that was being passed on came as a result of the dock workers. My supervisor on PhD student, his grandfather, because it was one of the people that was at Jack Johnson's farewell. And what I've realized, because what I knew of Jack Johnson basically was that he married white, you get the white story about it. But then I began to think, and I thought even before I knew of his relationship with black people here in Australia in the early 1900s, I began to think, I bet he had some kind of connection with blacks here at that time. And in that early period of the 1900s, you see slavery or indentured servitude happened in Australia at the close of the American Civil War, or at the close of when they stopped trading people. And I also felt and believed, and I guess Vanessa will, not Vanessa, will be able to, will know more later. But I had the sense that it's the Alabama slavers decided to continue selling and continue doing here, so that they would bring the South Pacificans from Australia, from the South Pacific Islands, black people there, to Australia. Then Australian white workers and everybody after about 40 years decided they didn't want them anymore. So in that early 1900s, that's when they started deporting them wholesale. With no, just deporting them, taking them back. So there was a big black movement and organization, colored organization, advanced organization was happening where people were trying to help internationally. So that's all for black people. In that period, through that black grapevine, I'll skip a little bit, information about Marcus Garvey happened. So there was a Garvey movement here in the 20s. And they learned about it and they wanted to set up something, but the Garvey movement was totally sabotaged in the U.S. And so that ended. But all the different advancement leagues, and it started really in the 1920s. So there's been that kind of connection all along, and then we keep going up until when I get here. Now I don't know very much about Juneteeth, but I've researched it and have come to learn and think about it in a very, that it can be a very important holiday. I'll go through, because I wrote some stuff down, so I'll go through some of the stuff. But coming from the East Coast, like Francesca, I grew up in Philadelphia. And Philadelphia was a center of abolitionists and fight against, because black people always fought against slavery. They fought against the institution. And I'm thinking, we have to stop thinking about the institution starting just in 1690. We've got to go back to the 1400s, at least, and maybe more, but at least the 1400s, it's pinpointed, because Pope Nicholas in 1452 created a bull, or an edict, that gave permission and told the European, mostly Spanish and Portuguese, to go and invade the West African coastline and take the people as slaves and go into the land, take the land. 1492, we all know in America, because it's embedded in this, that's when Columbus discovered the New World. But what else happened? 1493, a year later, Pope Alexander, numbers mixed up, but anyway, Pope Alexander or something, created the doctrine of discovery, which said that, again, all the land was to be divided, all the New World was to be divided and come under the dominion of European monarchs. Anybody, any place, if a monarch hadn't settled there or had put his flag down, it could be claimed, and the people were to be subjugated, and it was their duty. They had the God-given authority to take over the lands and then continue. So that's where it starts. Then I've come to 1660, when the first Africans as indentured servants are brought to America. Now, the indentured servants were the same as white people, and they were working and after a period, and they had the same rights, and they could do whatever after their period of servitude. It wasn't chattel slavery yet, and it wasn't institutionalized yet. They could vote, they could have guns, they could do all things like There was no such concept that we think of as black and white. We were just people. However, 1660, about 60 years, little by little, there's little bits of rebellions and things, but by about 1676, about 60 years later, there's a big rebellion where black workers, white workers, and Native Americans join against the white ruling class and have such a big rebellion that lasted 2 years before it was put down. There's a lot to the story. So then, in about 5 years, the ruling elite decided they had to do something. They've been trying to do things from about 1640. And it was 1681 when the actual concept of black people, white people, came into legal thought and legislation in 1640. In that way, they did what they did, and part of what they did was they made it illegal. Black people couldn't have guns, they couldn't have any kind of property anymore, and all sorts of other things. But white people could, because they didn't want the workers to get joined together, so they had to divide them. And they continued to build those laws and strengthen them until we have the Black Codes happening in 1705, so that they have actually created the concept of white supremacy, because you have to make the whites, no matter how poor they are, they're better than the blacks, because the blacks have no legal privileges. The humanity is taken away from them. They have no human rights. Neither do the Indians, by the way, because Indians were also enslaved. And I read, but I don't quite have all the details, but there was a period where as many Indians were being deported out of the U.S., more Indians were being deported out of the U.S. on the East Coast, which we don't know very much about what happened on the East Coast, then Africans were being imported. So some of these people that are knocking at the door now in Mexico might be original people who belonged from the East Coast. Who knows what they were all. So we don't know too much about that. That's another story. So we have so this is the basis. And my thing is, they say white people are very fragile, but they have the white supremacists have purposely built and embedded into law, which is still in the laws. It's not going away. The history is still all about, it's still white supremacy. No matter the laws that are being made, people are saying, oh, it's finished. But until the education of all the propaganda, U.S. history is about propaganda. It's propaganda to uphold white supremacy. It's to keep black people, and it's also to hide the truth about the Indians and Native Americans, because we don't think about the Native Americans hardly. They're not on the radar. Aboriginal people have been very powerful and very strong, taking the whole thing, the whole black movement that was happening in the 60s and before, and finding a unique way to assert their presence and to get on the map and the radar of Australia in such a way that at least land is acknowledged. When we think about slavery, we don't think about what was happening to the Native Americans. You see, I see it as a process that's one. You have the stealing of people, and you have the stealing of land. And they're happening together. What what's happening with the African people who have been stolen, though, they're fighting in many, many different ways, and up to the point of, let's say, Juneteeth, they are winning. But what's happening with the Native Americans? The Native Americans, we have this Western expansion. The winning of the West is it's glorified as manifest destiny, the God-given right of the whites. They have to take over the land. These people are fighting and losing their land, their humanity, and their freedom at the same time as we're gaining. And they're being decimated. They increased us, and they decreased the Indians. And the Indians fought a great war. So at the time of Juneteenth, coming from Philadelphia, my father celebrated Freedom Day. And Freedom Day was commemorating and remembering when Lincoln signed the 13th Amendment, which was February 1, 1865. April 4, 1865, the Senate ratified it. 11 days later, Lincoln was shot and killed. June 19th, the war isn't really over because a lot of places in the South aren't accepting the fact, again in April 1865, that Lee surrendered. So a whole lot of people aren't accepting it. And by the way, aren't accepting that. And by the way, the person who became the president, Lincoln's vice president, was Andrew Johnson. And he was another Trump, probably almost worse than Trump. He was impeached, but jumping ahead a little bit before the Emancipation Proclamation, he was a white Southerner, and he mostly refused to try to put in any of the legislation that the Union government was going to have. Anyway, June 19th, slaves, not everybody, but loads of Southerners had decided they were leaving the South with their slaves and had come into Texas, because Texas was very strong. It was a southern state, and they were determined that they were going to hold out. So it was June 19th that the Union Army came in and told the people that they could be free. However, we have to think about and they said based on the Emancipation Proclamation. And we look at the Emancipation Proclamation and know that it didn't free everybody, but it freed the slaves. But it did something that was even more important. It had to do that. It enabled the slaves, black slaves and black freedmen, to join the Union Army. So at the time of 1865, there were about 180,000 Union soldiers. So the troops that came into Texas would have been were Union troops, but they would have been a combination of black and white. And they were there to support the slaves who could leave. So their political position, because if the slaves, I assume, they say they didn't know about it, I assume the people understood, many people understood and knew about the Emancipation Proclamation, knew all about the war, and the grapevine is strong. But they had the support. It couldn't be, of course, it was the Union soldiers that enforced the fact that they were no longer slaves, and they could go back. And all the wonderful things that happened with Annie's family and a whole lot of other families was able to happen, because there were a lot of
They killed a whole bunch of people.
Well, they killed a bunch too, but
David said, stay there, don't leave, stay there and serve your master, but get a salary for it. And they were getting killed off. They knew, but they were getting, it was too dangerous to be free.
Yeah, but people still became free. Still, they had to fight and they had to work. And it wasn't easy because it's not easy now. America is still fighting the Civil War. That's what Trump is all about, as far as I'm concerned. But I look at my generation, which is us and all my friends at home, and look at what we've come through, what we've done, and I think about our parents and how they made the way for us, and then our grandparents, and great-grandparents, and so forth and so on. So to me, I guess that's the story. And Juneteenth, the significance of Juneteenth to me is that it helps to shatter a lie. Because it was a lie that they lied about the Emancipation Proclamation. U.S. history, as I said, is that we are taught is virtually a lie. Because of it's a horrible story, but we have to make it as beautiful as we can. But we have to include, and I think it's up to African Americans to not forget the Native Americans, who population-wise are in a weaker position. Because June 19, 1865, again to get a picture of what was happening in the time, what happened in Galveston, Texas. 10 years later, 1875, that's the Battle of Little Bighorn. And that's the last big fight where the Native Americans won. And then they really have become institutionalized. So, and they're fighting, and now they're trying to, actually Australia has been the leader, Indigenous Australia has been the leader in the idea of acknowledgement. And I think in America, in Australia, Black and Indigenous to the land, to that particular land, is one and the same people. In America is too. So we have to acknowledge and recognize both Native American to the land and African American. And we must remember, because this is what is just I'm really coming to terms with and understanding in a way that I didn't understand, that not only, it's not just free labor, which is what people want to talk about, but we were property. We were chattel. If Thomas Jefferson had wanted to, had wanted to free the slaves, because he was also very extravagant, he wouldn't have been able to, because those slaves belonged to the bank. That's what being chattel slavery means. He just wouldn't have been able to, because the bank would have really owned the slaves, even though they were under his position, just similar to us owning property. So that's what it's about. We have to change history and help people understand that this idea of white supremacy has been taught and built and is still being built.
Ooh. Wow. That was an education, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. But you left out a very, very important fact about who you are.
Humble as always.
This woman is incredible. You just skipped that whole thing.
I'm Carol Johnson.
And?
I came to Australia in 1972 when Indigenous Australians were put up to Tent Embassy, and I participated in that with them, and Indigenous Australians were able to participate through dance. I'm a dancer, and I came to the dance company and was waiting around to start a solo tour through Southeast Asia. I was getting that organized, and while I was getting that organized, the Tent Embassy happened, and I had workshops, and Indigenous Australians were able to use the dance to participate in a political event that was very, very important. So that makes the contemporary dance, they were using it in a similar way as people who had the traditional dance used in ceremony, but this was in a public way, and it was the first time, and then I ended up staying and had hope and created a school, which then led to
school?
The oldest dance school in New South Wales. That dance school.
And it led to Ngara, which is celebrating its 30th anniversary. Wow. And the person who helped put Maysden to the top, it's called Maysden Dance Hall, but really helped put it on the map and make it get well known. This lady here, Eddie Maddox, Kimberly.
So modest, isn't she? Oh my goodness. Yes, and our next speaker, Sienna.
Well, what do you say after that? How do you follow all that historical information? I mean, there is a big connection there. I met both Andy and Carol when I first came out in 1988, not knowing that that was the big centenary year. Didn't know what the hell was going on. I was just arrived in this very, very far away place. I ended up dancing at Aboriginal Island. I was teaching there. Raymond, who I must... Hi, Raymond. Dear Raymond, who's a mutual friend of ours. So yeah, that I got a real footing there. You know, I'm a dancer, Graham dancer. I danced in Toronto Dance Theatre professionally. Then I came out, got into filmmaking, and a whole other series of things went on. And now I'm at the point in my life I finally made a bit of a transition, and I've written a book, which I brought because I'm going to do that. I'm going to be really crude and crass and show it up so that you can have a look at it. It's called Master of My Fate, and it kind of intersects with everything that we've been talking about. The only difference is, and I didn't know a lot about Juneteeth either, so it's great to hear about that. We have our own emancipation processes within the British colonies of the West Indies. I'm from Jamaica. And I guess for me it's a very different scenario because I was born in the Black Country. And I think that has a different impact on you. It was colonized in 1494, so you're going all the way back. Christopher Columbus found it. Killed off all the Arawaks that were there, which were the natives of that particular country, brought in slavery at that particular point, and that went on until 1838. So that was 400 similar experience of slavery in Jamaica. So my understanding, but you know, even there, talking about slavery, because it's West Indians are very class conscious, as a lot of people might not know if you're West Indian. I see some nodding over there. So, you know, when I first arrived in 1988, people didn't talk about convicts. It was kind of a really bad thing to say if you had convicts in your background. That was very much looked down upon. And I think it's a similar thing in the West Indies. No one talks about whether you've got slavery. Now it's opening up. But, you know, to talk about that, I think unless you were an academic, it wasn't something that you wanted to really talk about, even though, of course, that's where we get our strength, that's where we get our resilience, that's where it all comes from, is that ability to be Usain Bolt and run really, really fast. Because if you got people and dogs chasing you, you need to know how to run, right? So, I mean, his body is an absolute, you know, amazement to me. And it's been developed over 400 years of slavery, I think. It's come out of So the connection really for me is that I've brought it all the way back to Australia because this convict that I discovered where I was working at Hyde Park Barracks was Jamaican. And he was transported as a convict in 1836 and brought here. And that has opened up a whole different understanding. It's added to the dialogue about what kinds of people make up Australia. And I think that's really important. And just a little sideline, Cassandra Pybus has written a fantastic book about what did you
referring to.
Yeah. So, and there have been various people, a lot of academics have done work in this area. It's just that it's not out in the public. I think the fact of the White Australia policy, before that it was probably a lot more well known. I think after that, not only did it happen to Indigenous people, but I think anybody of colour was completely sort of, devalued and put under the carpet. Nobody came from anywhere else except, Ireland, England, Wales, whatever. So it's interesting, I find, that now all of this information's coming out. It's really opening things up, and people have been dragged, and others have been fighting for years for that. Years and years and years. People were dragged into Queensland to work in sugar, and I know you've got a great conference coming up about that. And, sugar, putting sugar in our tea has been at the basis, at the root of an incredible amount of suffering in the world. And in a way, for me, writing the book was about discovering who I was. And I think anybody involved in this process, that's what happens. You start to see who you are, where you come from. And I hadn't realized how important it is to figure out where you belong. Are you Australian? Are you Jamaican Australian? Are you African Australian? Are you, what is that? What does that really mean? And I think we'll probably end up talking a little bit about that today, perhaps, because there are going to be more and more people who weren't born here. And I totally agree with what Carol's saying about Indigenous Australia. I think it's got a tremendous strength and resilience, more so than Canada, where I grew up. Native Canadian Indians are having a really hard time there. I think Indigenous Australians should be very proud of the fight and the struggle that they've had, and it's working. And I think I've been trying to figure out how come, and I think it's because it's 200 years. It's, when the colonization process happened, it happened so late in the game that, unlike Jamaica or unlike what happened in African American culture, I mean, can you imagine the slavery if we had social media when slaves were brought over to America?
We got social media, we got slavery today.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I think things would have been a little bit different. Things moved a bit slower then. People could get away with a lot more than they can now. So anyway, I'm rambling a bit, but that's kind of it.
Thank you. Awesome. And we have one last speaker. Are you happy to sit there? Or?
Come out the front, sister. Just. All right. Good to see you, eh? Okay, I'll talk to you soon.
We also thought that it was important to hear from our younger generation. Mrs. Stephanie.
Hello, I'm Stephanie. I'm from London. I don't have much history as the other speakers. But what I know from myself being a young black girl growing up in Britain, I suffered a lot of anxiety that I didn't really know where it was coming from. And I couldn't pinpoint where it was coming from. And it was only later on in my life that I realized that it's the subliminal messaging that is around me. Of course, I knew about my history, I knew about slavery, I knew about the position of black people in the Western world, but I didn't really know that I carried that, I carried the same ideology and I believed it about myself. And I don't know much about, you know, freeing slaves or fighting for anything, but I came to a point where I had to learn how to fight for myself and free myself. I took a trip to New York in 2017 and visited the African American Museum, and there was so much there that I saw, and I couldn't absorb everything at once. And I went back on the train, going back to Brooklyn, and I had a panic attack on the train, and I actually felt like I was going to die, because from what I saw, it showed me I was nobody as a black person, because that's how the world sees me, because that's how the world has portrayed black people, that we're nobody, that we can be killed at any moment. Black boys can be killed at any moment by police. Black boys are killing each other because the belief that they have about themselves. So I embarked on a spiritual journey, which was the only thing, in my opinion, that has helped me to overcome it, to really starting to understand who I was. Without any academic theories about what blackness, what defined blackness, it was about who I was as a human being, and what ideas were out there about me that I took on, and that I believe that my family even took on, because when we spoke about, when I learned about being ugly, okay, I never really thought I was ugly, but when I learned about black people being perceived as ugly, it came from home. And that is stuff that my family also learned just through colonization, right? So I knew that we carry that ideology, you know, black guys telling us that we're too rude or we're too loud, or that we can't stroke our hair, like just those sort of subliminal messages that we will carry on within our own community that was eating ram every day. So when I went on my spiritual journey and I started meditating, all of those things that I thought about myself that I didn't even know I was thinking, it was all in my subconscious, started rising up. And I started questioning it. It was like, who told you that? Who told you that about yourself? And what makes it true? When I walk into a shop and I'm conscious about my race, that somebody's going to follow me, who gives them the right to follow me, or who gives them the right to define me as a thief or whatever? And why do I have to? What's the point? Why do I have to believe it? And from the moment I started questioning that, a little bit of liberation started to happen, because I knew that we didn't really have real power to define me, who I was. And just from that place of pain, I entered from that place of pain and started to understand that I'm just an equal person as everybody else. But I had to say that it started just from understanding who I was as a person and having a connection, a spiritual connection with God or the universe, and understanding that, you know, I don't have to accept other people, whether it's race or men or people in profession, to define who I was. And I think that was the beginning of my emancipation.
Oh. Thank you, sister. Stay there.
Thank you. You can still sit there.
Thank you.
Wow, that was really, 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 really powerful. And thank you guys for, you know, discussing, talking in your own way about what Juneteenth means. And I think for me, as well as the members of the Black Collective, listen, putting on these events, you know, you talk about it, and you talk about developing a sense of community, and, you know, that discussion then becomes, well, what are we going to do about it? you know, are we going to continue to talk about it, or are we going to actually take action? So I got together with some doers and said, let's take action. And then we also thought, okay, this is a really, really significant day. And as you heard today, even, you know, some of our most prominent members of the community, you know, are just learning about it. How many of you knew about Juneteenth? Yeah? Okay, just about half, right? And for me, it's shocking, you know, that a lot more people don't know about it, especially people of color, specifically Black people. But that's okay, because today marks the beginning of this discussion, and this will continue to happen every year. Even if I'm the only person here talking to myself about it, we're going to celebrate it, and it's really important. I think just a little bit about my story. I arrived in Sydney in 2008, and the first thing that I said to myself, where are the Black people? I'm not talking about African Americans, where are the Black fellas? You know, the indigenous people. More specifically, where are the indigenous people in decision-making positions? Crickets. So then I thought, okay, let me do a little bit more investigation, and I have to be honest, you know, I was just talking and asking random people, and I heard about, you know, historically, you know, what's been going on, and I thought, gosh, that's so similar to what was going on with us. You know, in America, that sounds like pre-civil rights happening. And I think it was 2 weeks after I arrived, there was an apology. I was like, what the hell is he apologizing for? This is 2008. I can't believe that this is actually happening. And then I thought to myself, what are you going to do about it? What can you contribute? You know, should you get on the street, start protesting? I was like, that's probably not going to work. Or can you use your talent and your passion to actually make a difference? Because I see it like this. There is no separation with us and them. It's me. That could be me. It is me. So if I don't begin to take steps to bring the community, whatever it is, together and align myself with Indigenous Australians, then I'm not going to enjoy my time here. Because creating community is one of my highest values. And if there's an injustice happening, I want to be in it because it's happening to me as well. And the genesis of bringing this whole group together, the Black Collective, it says it's in its name, the collective. We all come from different communities, but we're all the same. Everybody is looking for a sense of community and belonging. I don't know about you, but there's nothing like, you know, looking around the room and knowing, to some degree, each and every one of you, and we all have that sense of belonging and community. And today, yes, you know, it's a celebration of something that happened that was absolutely horrible, but we're talking about it. And I really hope that beyond today, you go out and you communicate, hey, I was a part of this little teeny tiny little discussion, and we were talking about Juneteenth, but we also talked about what are we going to do as individuals and as a community. Does that make sense? So I'm going to give you a little homework at the end. So I wanted to open it up to the panel and ask a couple questions, and it doesn't matter who answers what. As you know, I'm really passionate about kind of like the African American and the Indigenous relationship, and what are we doing? Because I feel like there's a lot of similarities happening. So my first question is, African Americans and Indigenous Australians share a similar colonial experience and social economic outcomes. What do you think can be done to strengthen the relationship between the two communities and therefore empower each other to bring about social and political change in Australia?
They've done it.
So the short is, for all of you guys who couldn't absorb all of that, what can we do to strengthen the relationship between African Americans and Indigenous Australians, and how can we use that to come together to make change? Because there's a lot of change that needs to happen in this country.
Well, I know what I did is that I lived in the Blue Mountains. I lived in the Blue Mountains, and one day, every month, we would have the indigenous people come over. Because we lived in our there was a cave, which was an Aboriginal cave, and it had paintings and drawings, and they would come to clean up the area. So I would be out there with my pail and my shovel, and we would take up the dirt, and we would take up the weeds. And then in the end, I would invite them back to my house, and we would have tea and cakes, and I became an adopted Aboriginal. And I would go to all their parties, and they would have the carvery, and they would have all the bands and stuff. And so there's a lot of stuff going on in the Blue Mountains. And so I think, for me, I deal on a one-to-one. I meet people, and when I see Graham, the Aboriginal guy with his didgeridoo at Newtown Station playing, I give him a big hug and kiss and say, hey, how are you, how's family? And I think that's what we have to do. We just have to work on a one-to-one. For me, and that's how I feel.
Yeah. As we're not a government, we can't do a whole bunch of stuff. I've been making notes here, guys. I wasn't texting people. Trying to get off the top of that. So I've got down here, accountability, responsibility. That we're not celebrating this day, we're acknowledging it and moving the plans forward. Internalized oppression, the many shackles that we bring, all that stuff. Too many times people don't want to talk about the past. We have generational trauma, and people don't want to keep bringing it up, so they don't tell you guys what it was like. They don't tell you because they don't want you to hurt the way they were hurt. So I apologize for all of us for not being more honest about it, because just don't want to hurt. When I got here, first thing I did was make a film, because I was a filmmaker. And every film I saw when I got here was made by a white person, and they had their point of view. And often their point of view was noble, savage, or royal perspective. I saw relatives. So yes, Francesca, get to people one-on-one. Let's get together. Where are all those brothers that I see on African Americans in Australia? Why don't I see Shamar here? Where is Malik? Where are those people here? We need to be coming out and meeting. They got here for a movie. What the heck? Can't be getting here for something like this.
I'll just reinforce what Andy and Francesca said, but especially Francesca. Relationship. Yes. That's the only way to do it.
Look, I think it's a really complex situation. I've actually got a stepdaughter who's Indigenous, half Indigenous. She's from the Northern Territories, Yurikala area. I've got a lot of Indigenous friends. I'm just getting back to this Apology Day. What was amazing about that was that the Prime Minister actually got up and said, I'm sorry. And there was Reconciliation Day, where I met a lot of fantastic people who I'm still friends with. And I think that day was even more important for white people. My flatmate wept we watched it on television. She wept and wept and wept because for the first time in her life she felt the guilt that she had been carrying around about everything, that she thought she had nothing to do with, but that she had always felt guilty about, had been released. So that apology, I think, was a real turning point, whether much came out of it or not. I think it was a marker. Something got released on a national level when that happened. I think with Indigenous Aboriginal people, we have to understand that it's their land. This is the difference between being a migrant and being an Aboriginal person. It's their land that has been taken away from them. They have been colonized, yes, in a similar way in terms of African Americans, Jamaicans, whichever way you want to look at it. In the British Empire, slavery is as horrible as the African American. So when it comes to Indigenous people, I feel I owe them, I support them in a way, and I'm not sure if I have expectations of them supporting me, because I feel it's a slightly different situation. They're fighting for respect in a different way. They're fighting for acknowledgement that this is their country. And I'm not fighting for that. I'm fighting for acknowledgement for me as an individual. I don't know if that makes any sense. And I think perhaps that's why it is difficult to pull those threads together apart from the way that Francesca was talking about, that you do it individually, because it's a different battle, I think, perhaps.
Yeah, and also I want to say too, I'm sorry, talking about pulling things together. Yeah. I have a house in Alabama, and when I moved there, because my father had left me this house, and I went to the nearest church, and I walked into that church, and I sat down, and so eventually I actually became the first Black person, become a member of that church, the first Black person to be baptized in that church. And so they said, and all my Black friends would say to me, actually one of them, my neighbor said to me, well, she said, where did you go to church? I said, I go to the First Baptist Church. She says, well, I go to the First Baptist Church. She said, but I've never seen you there. So anyway, it came out that there were two First Baptist churches, a white church and a Black First Baptist church. Which actually, and I said to her, I said, I didn't realize that my church was painted white, but I said, but they invited, she said, well, you know, they used to stand on the front steps of that church to keep Black folks from coming in. I said, yeah, that might be true. I don't know about that. I know when I walked into that church, they embraced me, they invited me in. And the lady that I sat next to, she said, I've been praying to God for someone like you to walk through this door and hear you.
Vanessa, do you want to say something?
What Ian said about, I really don't know what it's like to be an Aboriginal person. I don't know how to be born in a country that is, I know that is marked as a country and not have any rights. I really do not know what it's like. I mean, I come from an African background and I was born in Africa, and those Black presidents is like everybody, teachers, lawyers, or whatever, so I don't know. To come here and see how they are second-class citizens still today, and we don't know much about it. I know that many African Americans who come here are celebrated because the American culture is so big, and for some, from what I've noticed, is that you forget you're also in that same position in America, and then because you're celebrated here, you forget about the Aboriginal oppression, and I have noticed that a lot. So I think you're just acknowledging them as the first issue.
Can I just ask a question from you guys? Lately, I tell people I'm a triple A. That's not a greatness, it's who I am. I'm an Australian African American. I could turn 80 this year, so I'm now quad A. Ancient. But I find that I feel like I've got friends who are Australian Jamaican, Australian African American, Australian Somali, Australian Indian, whatever. But if you put the Australian first, even Australian Indigenous, which is as strong as you can get, if you put that first, you're saying we all are Australian. Does that make sense? It's a small change. To me, it's a big one in my head, though. And I know we have ways we've been doing things. What do you guys think?
I'll never do that. I'm Chilean Australian. Chile first.
Okay. What is the...
Because I am born of Chilean parents. And to me, if I was to put Australia...
Country, culture. Country,
my
culture.
parents.
Okay. So you'd rather culture, country.
Yeah, parents, my heritage, my roots, my blood.
Okay.
And then the country would say.
Yeah, good to know that. Thank you. That's why I'm asking. Anybody else?
I've always said African American, Cherokee, and Irish history. So, but I think the practicality of that, more than the thinking of not being Australian first, was because every time that I've been asked where are you from my whole entire life, what they're really asking is why don't you look white?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but where are you really from?
Yeah.
Where am I really from? I just did not installation.
That's the first one. The first one, where are you from? And then you tell
And I'm like, I'm Australian. And they're like, but where are you really from?
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Okay.
No, it's all good.
Go on, Daria.
Okay, so yours is because you need
Mine was more because I was...
That's in the past.
Yeah.
Okay, and in the future, how do you see yourself?
Well, in the future, how I see myself is I'm trying to find a way to be here. And I'm still on that road. And so it's very much a journey. So I mean, I'm very much connected to Tennessee. And that's that physical, spiritual thing. But I'm very much connected to the place where I am now as well. So I realize that I have a soul connection in both places, to both pieces of land.
Okay.
Not particularly to a culture, to these pieces of land that for some reason there's a connection to.
Yeah, I agree with you on that because people say to me, because I'm not a citizen yet, so I'm going to do citizenship. And I said, for me, home is where when I'm in America, that's my home. When I'm here, that's my home. I don't think about Australia when I'm not here, and I don't think about Alabama when I'm not there. So I'm in the moment.
Yeah, it's a really interesting
I just want to say, Dario Phillips, I've been here since 1981, 82. African American, turning 66 at the end of this month. I've been here that many years. My connection is we have kids together, me and Chris have. And when I first met her, it was 17 or something, 19. I asked her, is your father from someplace or from something? And that's how we got the connection the first time. And so since then, as an African American, Australian, because I don't know, I'm trying to throw a little history out here. I brought a dance out here, street dancing. I was the first hip hop dancer out here. But I brought it as a way of my culture. But I was trying to connect it with being Australian. So I had a discussion with a guy last night. I said, it's still, even though it's my culture, it's still Australian culture. It's still connected because I had to do it in a way to where people can digest it over here. So that was pretty much where that went. I guess what I'm trying to say as far as the connection goes with this, and maybe I'm just gonna be a little bit honest, play a bit of the devil's advocate, okay? So many discussions I've had with African American brothers out here, so many times, about connecting, being together. And this guy, he sort of said it to me in a way that kind of blew me away. And he said, man, a lot of brothers come out here, they didn't come out here to be with other black people. They knew what was here. When they looked on their Saw the little white girls and all that stuff going on out there. They knew that they was gonna come over here and do what they was gonna do. You know what I mean? And I've been in connection with a lot of brothers out here that say black, 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 black. And when you look in their background and you look at the way that they're approaching everything, it's not about that. And to me, this is why when you guys have these panels and people talk about connecting and everything, I go out to Blacktown a lot of times and I started a dance out here called Crump, and that's like African roots. I started that. And I've been fighting with a lot of African kids to start your own thing. You know what I mean? But they get confused, going, well, we want to be connected with everybody else. I'm like, yo, you need to do your own thing and show little African kids how to do this dance, because as an African American, we took the dance from Africa. We took that stomping and that chest part and the arm swinging. We stole that from Africa. Only problem was we forgot about it. It only came out in 2002, where we basically, where the dances actually reflected, like the lock-in and all that was the 70s, and that was the, you know, the happy times and disco times. Then there was the popping and all that. Then when planes started flying in the buildings, and then you had like the George Bushes and all that. 2002, these kids start arm swinging. They start throwing their hands and And so me and another African kid started this dance out here, and these African kids saw it and they were like, oh my God, that looks like me over there. That looks like that, you know? And I ran out here to start the dance, and she told me it was gonna take me 2 years because Australians wasn't gonna be open to that. You see what I'm saying? But I still, the problem with me is, what's funny is I couldn't even get African Americans to do it. Like, man, you ain't doing that stuff. You know, what's wrong with you? Dude, this African dancing. This is from our culture. So I can't expect Americans to attach themselves to people out here if they don't even attach themselves to their own stuff. You see what I'm saying? Like, I can't get you to help these guys if you're not doing anything for yourself, as far as that goes. And I keep trying to push that. So I understand, because we used to have little groups, brothers get together, and brothers and so-and-so, and brothers of this, and then they start fighting over, you know, each other's girlfriends, and then they split up and stuff. You know, and then it's just like, that's the reality. I'm just telling you, that's why they fight. They don't fight over real issues.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna take
it Tell it like it is.
So I'm just trying to say that basically the fight with each other like over important issues, like real stuff. And when you can connect to yourself out here, then you can go to the indigenous people and say, yo, you know, boom, we want to connect with you and stuff. Because I can ask so many people. Like I just did, I mean, not to be bragging, I just did a video clip with a young brother out here to connect with him, Baker Boy. I just did his clip. And,
wow.
and to connect with this brother and stuff like that, just to have this thing, and knowing that he's rapping, because the rapping started back there. So it influenced young kids out here to do the same thing. So what I'm saying is, if people can be real with themselves and say, why am I really here? You know what I mean? Because yeah, when I came here, there was 4 brothers here. You know, and they was fighting over women then. But it was like 4 brothers here. And so I would wish that there's like 1, 2, 3. There's not many brothers out here. They should be here. You know what I mean? They should be on this panel right here talking about the psychology of a black African American coming out here. You know what I mean? Because I was shocked when I first met people. You know, like this girl like really liked me. She's like, hey, I really like Negroes. And they're like, you don't know. I said, can you say black? And they go, oh my God, I can't say that. I said, you can say black. They go, do you guys get offended? I said, no, that's exactly what you say. I just read not long ago in a course that I did to not say I don't know if this is true or not, to not say the word Aborigines. Is that true?
Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
Because I see people say Aborigines, and it's like they say that's offensive.
So was black. So was black.
Yeah. So I always see people, African Americans, and when they say that, oh, okay. Well, well, that's what I'm saying. We, as some African Americans, don't even know that. So they do say they say Aborigines. They say that. So what we have to do is somehow find a way to connect. The closest I ever been was I went up to Nullarbor, the Brood Island, and I was on an island with just that. And I was like, and I tried to understand the culture. It shocked me, man. I'm like, there's this kid that gave me some sunglasses. And I saw him the next day and said, where's the sunglasses? I gave them to my brother. I'm like, I just gave you stuff? And they say, we don't own stuff. I was like, really? You know, and then I had to teach a dance class. I would teach some moves. I come back the next day like that. I was like, what? So y'all just pick it up like that? He said, yeah. I was like, so to me, that's really powerful. That you got, like, people used to get me mixed up with Anthony Mundine. I don't know why. But anyway, you see a young brother like that go from football to boxing, and people try to stand in the way of that and say, oh, you're not allowed to be able to go from here to here to here. To me, my understanding of Aboriginal people was that they just didn't stay with things long. You know, I heard all about the walkabouts and all that, how they hang on to something and they boom, then they up and gone and stuff like that. And to me, I thought that was attractive. If you think you need to just get away from something, you just get up and go. You know, you just get up, you don't have to be attached to anything. See what I mean? So I was learning that. I'm sorry? Yes. So I don't mean to dominate the conversation, but I'm saying as far as African Americans out here go, you were asking how can we do that? Yeah. And I said that they have to more or less, you got to know some guys out here or some people out here that came intentionally to do that. Because I know dancers that come from overseas will ask me that. They go, hey man, where's the Aborigines? I'm like, no, you can't say that first. But where are they? And then the only thing I know is some dumb stuff. I'll say, like, go to Redford, go to this, and do this.
So you would get together with the brothers and educate them and teach them and
They have to be interested first.
They have to be interested first. And this, I'm just being honest. I'm being honest.
Can Vanessa say something? Vanessa?
So I'm Vanessa. I'm Aboriginal in Torres Strait Islander. My people are from Yupangathi area in Cape York in the Torres Strait. I was born and raised in culture, and it is offensive to say Aborigines. Thank you for saying that. I'm a social epidemiologist in medicine, and as for walkabout, I stay. And when you talk about connection, I think, you know, an interesting thing from the panel is about that connection of slavery and land. And we don't talk about that very much. And when you start highlighting that connection about that freedom and the importance of that freedom, I think that's when you start to find the balance between the cultures. Because people have to understand there's different types of Indigenous people in the world. There's black Indigenous people, there's red Indigenous people, there's yellow Indigenous people, and there's the white others. And so the black Indigenous people are African American, or African, Papua New Guinea, Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific. We are the black Indigenous people of the world. And then we start in the red, which is the Indian people throughout Canada and America. And then we got the yellow people, which is Asia. And of course, the white fellas over in Europe and Britain mainly, and the English Isles area. So when you start understanding that, you understand that importance of connection and freedom. And that whole thing of relationship building. Because that's the one thing we all have in common. We all have in common that relationship building. You know, like when Francesca was saying, you know, she could stop somebody and say, where are you from? We do the same thing. Like, where's your mouth? Where are you from? Yeah. Straight away. And we don't even think about it. And so it's a normality. It's normal conversation. Because suddenly you're not alone. And the worst part about the whole of the stolen generation and the apology was that the stolen generation, you know, it went on for a long time. And it still continues today. And they just changed the name of the policy. And those policies were there. And I think Andy was saying it was to remove people and it was Carol, you're saying the guilt. And you know, it was that guilt. The apology was part of that guilt. Yeah, and that's all it was about. And taking the children, because I took children so this is a term that is really racist in Australia. You don't say half caste, because the stolen generation took the children and tried to dilute the culture and the people. So you won't find very many black, coloured skin Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people anymore. My family, like I said, come from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander from Cape York and the Torres Strait. People in my family are still very black, and I'm very grateful for that. I think it's good because the dilution has happened, and it's not until my generation that my grandparents actually stopped. Now, both my grandparents are dark-skinned, are black people, but my grandparents were so worried that their grandchildren were stolen, they told all their children to marry white people. The fear was imminent across the whole of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Now we have a whole lot of Indigenous people in this country that are married to Caucasian people or white fellas. And we have very few that are actually interculturally married. And we're starting to see generations where people are no longer afraid. And see, the beauty about that African American culture, you guys are over that fear bit. And that's a power that we don't have yet. And when Andy talked about the traumas, sharing the trauma, like the transgenerational trauma is constantly shared in our culture. It drives you nuts. And yeah, and in yours as well. And it's, you know, we're at this level where like, okay, we need to stop sharing the trauma and let's start sharing that, sharing the love and the positive and that self-determination and stuff. And so when you talk about how we can connect, there's ways we can connect. And I think like Imelda is a very good key, especially with the arts. And you know, people have that shared with dance, with Carol. You know, like, and what you're saying, with dance. You know, like, this is powerful stuff. And so I guess that, and it's just that relationship building. Thank you.
Can I just thank you? I just want to acknowledge these amazing people in the room today, Dario and Sienna, Carol, Francesca and Andy, just in terms of the contribution and the manner in which you've worked with First Nations people. And I think, you know, the proof is in the pudding, in the outcomes that have happened in terms of Nays Bangara, the civil rights movement in Australia. And that's where you can learn from. Constant engagement and conversation with our seniors, our elders, you know, our knowledge keepers, you know, and culturally that's where we come from as Aboriginal, Torres Strait, South Sea Islander people. You know, it's all about the elders, the knowledge keepers, and the continued learning. So I think we need to humble ourselves a lot of the time. And I want to hear from Sister Girl up here, my bestie. Yeah, from a married perspective, because I listen to her 24/7, and you've got some great cultural insight. What? Oh, sorry, yeah, go on. Streaming? No. No, go on, no, true, sorry. You were just talking about it last night.
Yes, so tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Leslie Kingy, I'm from New Zealand. I'm a Māori, my mother was full Māori. My father was half Māori and half English. I moved to Sydney in 1979, 17 years old, started at school and wanted to come here to find out what it was like in a different country to the one that I grew up in. I grew up very immersed in my culture, so I grew up participating in a lot of Māori things, Māori kapa haka, activities with community, very close community is how I've grown up. When I came to Australia, I found the communities that were quite sort of segmented and split out, and I was looking to find a similar activity for me here, which took me a while. I've known Imelda now for, 30 years?
Oh, really?
And I mean, in terms of my sense of identity, I've lived here for nearly 40 years, and then about 3 years ago I moved back to New Zealand. One of the reasons that I really wanted to go was I was missing that connection that I had to my culture, and I wanted to reconnect with that and find my culture and who I was as a Māori woman. So I moved back to New Zealand for a job, but I wanted to make sure that I integrated back into the culture that I've come from. I didn't speak the language, I didn't grow up speaking the language. My mother was a fluent Māori speaker, didn't teach me the language because it was outlawed in our country back when she was growing up as a child. She was unable to speak her language at school, so she was a non-English speaking Māori 5-year-old going to school in an English environment and daily caned for speaking a language that was the only one that she knew, until she was basically forced to speak English over a period of time. And that is a whole generation of trauma around Māori speakers from a specific era in New Zealand, and that's a story that's going to start to come out over there, I think, over a period of time. So I didn't get to learn the language of my mother, and she's passed on now, but I thought if I go back to New Zealand, the first thing I want to do is actually learn to speak. So I went home to work in New Zealand, but after work I put myself through a university study, and I studied the language for about a year and a half after work. And it's the best thing I've ever done. I think the first thing I wanted to do was communicate with my people in my own language. So I learned to speak it. And once I learned to be able to communicate in that language to my own people, it kind of opened up a whole side of me that I wasn't accessing for decades. And I think that experience of being able to communicate in my language to the people that I love is transformational. I think communication is one of the keys. I think the second thing that I learned in New Zealand was when you reconnect back into your culture and you reconnect back to the culture that is connected to the environment and the land, and our whole spirituality is connected to the land and the environment. The land, the environment, and us as humans are all interconnected. So that experience for me was transformational, and I think when you stand on the land where you are from, what we call our whenua, and you stand there with your people of the land who are tangata whenua, whenua, people of the land. When you get to do that in your country and you can speak the language, that's when you really start to feel that there's a real it's a bit sort of cosmic, but you feel that chakra root go down into the earth and you just connect. And whenever I'm in New Zealand, I know exactly where I come from. And I'm connected to the land, I'm connected to the environment, and I'm connected to the tangata whenua that are from the land. And I think in terms of an Indigenous perspective, that's really important to me. How I name myself when I'm in Australia, I'm a Māori New Zealander living in Australia, because it's important to me to hold that culture in me. Doesn't mean that I'm not interacting or interacting with other cultures, because I'm kind of passionate about Indigenous cultures globally, and I think we all have a common yearn to know who we are and where we come from. I think we all have a common theme around us in terms of our spirituality, how we've connected ourselves to our land, our whenua, earth, and I think there is some common. One of the things I did with Imelda a few weeks ago, which I found really amazing, was I went to Mabo Day at Redfern Community Centre, and I got to see the Torres Strait Island dancers who I'd never seen before, and I got to see some Aboriginal dance, and I was sitting with my partner, and we looked at this dance. So dance is interconnected to culture globally, internationally, and I watched this dance and I went, wow, that's just like haka to me. There were aspects of dance that came through the both groups dancing, I could see aspects of each of their dance that I identified with through my own culture. So somewhere in our ethnicity, we all have something that links us as people. And I think one of the reasons why I like to I want to be a Māori New Zealand woman who takes their culture wherever I live. So wherever I go, my culture comes with me. And when I go home, I'll reconnect to the whenua, which is sort of the top up. But my children are born here, so I have Australian citizen daughter and granddaughter, so they are actually Australians who don't have the connection to the culture yet. And it's my intention to make sure that they have that opportunity to learn that through me, so they can have, so we don't lose that. Now that I've found that connection, I don't want to lose that connection. I want it to continue through the next generations that are coming through from me. And I think one of the things that we talk about in New Zealand and in the Māori world, in New Zealand there are two worlds. There's the non-Māori world, and then there's the Te Ao Māori world. Te Ao Māori world is the Māori world that we walk in, and one of the things that we value in our culture, we value knowledge, we value our people, we revere our elders. Our kaumātua to us, the older you get, the more revered you become, because you are the people that have been here the longest. You carry the knowledge that there are people that carry knowledge that I don't have, so I want to be near them so I can learn stuff. So to us, the older you are, the more higher up the food chain you become. So Andy, you're very, very special. You women carry knowledge that we need to know, and that will help us transform, and that will help us grow and continue those stories and that sort of sharing as we grow and embrace our age. So I think that's all I really wanted to say. But
PNG, please.
I want to go back to Andy's question about what you said about AAA. So I'm with Chile Overton, culture first. I was born in Papua New Guinea. Also, my respects to the traditional landowners first, because I consider myself a migrant here. My father is, they call me Muto's half caste, so I know what you're talking about. I know about, denying your blackness. So when I came here when I was 14, so over in PNG, you're called white European. When you come here, you identified as, I got called an Aboriginal. But then I went to a school here in Bondi Junction, and I found about subtle racism from Australian girls. So when I went to school here, the girls that I identified with was migrant girls, Portuguese, Greek, Italian, and Islander girls. They were so proud of their culture, they didn't deny their heritage. Their families taught about them, about their culture, and through them I found out about my own PNG heritage. And I didn't realise my mother had invoked all of that in me from being very little to be very proud and black, but I didn't realise because all around me it was all denied. But coming here to Sydney and meeting a multicultural population taught me how to be proud of my culture. So that's why part of me kind of denies that I'm half white because I experienced a lot of that subtle racism from white people. So being part of this, what I said today, I'm really happy to be part of this community is because you accept me, no matter what. So it's hard for me to say I'm Australian first, I always say I'm PNG first, always. Very proud to be Papua New Guinean. Islander culture is very, very strong, even through our tough times as well. And that's what I identify with most. And this has been wonderful here that we're all part of this. And I'm sure we've got a lot of stories to tell and share
It's all coming out.
Fulgo, you want to say something?
Thank you.
Come on.
I'm just really mindful of the time, and also I just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about how do we do this. There's been a lot of attempts to bring a number of communities together. Some have been successful, and some not so successful. So we really want to use the opportunity to kind of open it up, as well as, definitely have our speakers weigh in on this. What do you think needs to be done? What are the challenges? Putting on events like this aren't easy. Bringing people together to put events like this on aren't easy. But we did it, and we're all here. So anybody's open to share their opinion or advice or maybe best practice, worst practice. Anybody? Okay.
If you want it to be permanent, you have to have a driver who has the passion to maintain it and keep it no matter what. Otherwise, it'll come and go and come and go until you have that driver. Thank you.
And it's really good to have a location.
Yes.
When in Texas, because of segregation on Juneteenth, black people weren't allowed to go into places except on Juneteenth. So in Galveston, they bought land and called it Emancipation Park so they could go in it anytime they wanted to.
All right, so a driver and location, what else?
I think it's about acknowledging the humanness, the human side within all of us. Like, I'm really with you on, my belonging is about my spirituality. And that comes almost first before, my lens isn't I'm a woman of color. My lens is I am a human being trying to exist in this world. And with the support of the ancestors, which I'm very grateful for, and I hear their voices and I bring them through me, and that's what's happened with the book. So I think if we can, it's not that we take the emphasis off being, we come together because we're black, we come together because we're interested in the arts, because we want to talk about spirituality, because we want to talk about the things that we want to talk about, yes, with that lens, yes, with that filter of where we come from, but you can already see the dilemma that we're dealing with. I mean, I identify as a Jamaican person first, before being Australian, and so I think you'll find in a gathering like this, there are always going to be people who identify from their culture or their nationality. So then you do go deeper, and so what is it underneath that brings us all together? Is it going to be your beautiful fashion, the beauty of who we are? Is it going to be the arts? Is it going to be, I think I can get behind that, but just to get behind the fact that we're all of the same color or we're all colored, that doesn't interest me. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? I need it to be a much deeper connection. I don't know.
That's very honest. Yeah, I think and I'll get to you, I think the purpose of the TPC isn't about color. I think people define blackness in all types of ways. Your connection to black, it could be music, it could be art, it could be film, it could be whatever. It could be what? Food. Food, oh yeah.
That's a good place to start.
Right, start with some food. Yeah, this is more kind of like a focus group so we can get some ideas, because we don't want to miss the mark by making assumptions.
So,
just one moment. Yes, there you go.
So I think of two things. I think empathy and values. So, and the only way people can get the empathy right is through understanding. Understanding our history. So I think we need to have a lot more of these conversations. Just not just having like an event, but even, you know, just amongst each other, like every other day, we need to have those tough conversations, because that allows for people to understand where we're coming from and our values, because there's no point, I think the guy that's sitting over there just mentioned like there's no point in having a conversation with someone who doesn't want to have it.
Yeah.
They're not going to listen.
Yeah.
So we also need to identify people who are willing to, I guess, understand our culture, where we're coming from, and then that makes for constructive conversation.
Yeah, I've got some ideas.
Brother Tracy.
Hang on.
I'm Tracy Williams. I think new here. Been here about a year and a half. I'm from America. I wanted to scream out when they said where you from. I wanted to holler out Brooklyn. Yeah, born in Brooklyn, New York. I always say I'm from North Carolina by way of New York. Came here about a year and a half ago. Met Bridget, talked to Imelda a couple of times on the phone, and we kind of ran into each other. And Andy, to what you said, I love that. You named some guys I knew right there. You named some ones I knew, and that definitely we should be here. Yeah, we should be here. We should be here. You made me feel even better about being here. Because we all busy. We all got a whole lot of stuff that's going on. But you made me feel even better about taking the time, making the time, to be here and to be a part of this. Unfortunately, when it comes to African Americans, if we didn't have the African American woman, I think we would have been extinct. We would have never made it. You take the African American woman from us, we, not only just biologically, but even the ones that were here, that were brought there, it just wouldn't make it. Malcolm X once said, if you want to know the state of a nation, first check the state of its woman. And that when you teach a man something, you just taught a man. But if you teach a woman something, you taught a village, you taught a town, you taught a nation. And a lot of that's because women are nurturers naturally anyway. And the other thing is, when it comes to the African American male, we always look and try to find some definition for who we are. If you listen to hip hop and rap music and stuff, and videos and things, we all trying to find out what's the definition of manhood, what it is like to be a man. Because of systematic or institutionalized racism, the psychologists of that day understood how do you emasculate a man, and not only just emasculate him, you emasculate his seed, you emasculate everything that ever comes from him and even rubs up against him, because he's going to perpetuate that same thing over and over again. You understand the neuroscience behind it, the brain, the way it works, how is it, the patterns that it goes in. So now you're looking at a situation where here's a man here's a boy, and I know some 70-year-old boys. You had these boys that's looking for this manhood, something that they could grab hold to, because in Africa, as you were saying, Andy, with the griot, we had a rites of passage. We had all of those things that taught you what that was about. And when you strip a people from them and take all of that from them, that's the real emasculation. It ain't just taking them out and chopping something off. It's the mindset of what's going on. It's with the mind. Scripture tells us it's with the mind that we serve the Lord. It's your mind. If you get that mind, then you got everything else. Now we talk about, I agree with this brother here. Most of the guys out here, they're out here for these chicks. I just want to let him know I didn't come for that. I was a professional basketball player in America for years. That just kind of came with it. I had to come to Australia to get with some white girls. That was all through my college and all of that other stuff. I didn't need no extra. So that wasn't me. But then again, everybody's not me. But he does represent it. He's telling it like it is. I'm here to help change that. Because one of the things I told my children, that you weren't born in this world just to live here. You were born here to change it. You came to this world to change this world. Every one of us can change this world. And even if it's just one person at a time, we all can do that. If you want change, become the change that you want to see. And I love what you said, my sister. You said, I'm just like personal relationships, reaching out to people one by one. I mean, I was telling Bridget when you first came in, I said, look, you know, anytime you start something that's going to be worth something, start small. Absolutely. You know, you can't despise them small beginnings. Things like that's going to happen. You know, and then what you find out who really he want to be here. And, you know, and I said, and when you get bigger, you find out where you need to start looking for your leadership at. All of that stuff can be used later. Now, we have some major problems socially, you know, as black people, brown people, or whatever. And again, like I said, all of it because of what things that were systematically and institutionally still goes on, still goes on. You know, one of the things I do, I love to travel around the world and just listen to the coaches. Listen, I'm listening to my sister here. I just left New Zealand. I'm getting ready to go back and just talking to with the Maori people and just how different, you know, and how she talks about language. Immediately, she wants to connect with a language. Well, I'm an African American from Brooklyn. I don't know what I spoke. Batutsi, Swahili. I don't know none of that. That was all, again, part of my emasculation. I don't even know where to start with that. I mean, I guess you can do Ancestry.com, but I am kind of with that. I don't even really know if they hustling in me or not. Maybe it's Brooklyn in me. I don't know. I'm looking, there's an angle somewhere there. So I ain't really messing with it. So, but you have that privilege to be able to know where to start, to go back and do that. When I think about my history and where I start from, I mean, in school, they taught me I started with slavery. That's what they've been perpetuating with me. But on my own, I went out and became conscious and started reading and studying, because that's where it's going to be at. To get these guys that are over here, you got to re-educate them. Yep. You got to reprogram. You got to, you know, and the way you do it is kind of like when I spoke in schools. I would go and speak in schools, and I would tell kids, I said, look, your education is not the most important thing, being successful. As soon as I said that, Bridget, the principal started moving towards us. Yo, let me get him, let me get him, let me get him. And I said, not the most important thing, not the most important thing. That being successful in life, what you do is you go to a kid, because I hated school. Only reason I did good in school, because they told me I couldn't play basketball. So I started passing so I could play. I really did not like school, the monotony of it, going every day and the whole thing, you know, other than the girls or whatever. Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about it. But what they did, somebody came to me, a woman, came to me and said, what do you want to do with your life? First thing I said, I don't play basketball. And she said, I believe you can do it. She said, what do you want to do with basketball? I said, I want to be a professional. I want to get paid these month checks with commas on for the kids game. That's what I want to do. And she said, I believe you can do it. And then she said, now let me tell you how. And then she started telling me how my education was a stepping stone. Not a stumbling block, but a stepping stone to get to that money. Because I just wanted the bag, Bridget. I was trying to get to that. So when it's the way we have to come at these folks, or these guys, I don't care who they are, these boys. You got to come at them in a way where you understand their natural motivations. And really, I know how Max sound a little crude, where you got to start. But again, it's where we want to end up. We want to find out what's motivating you and how to get to that. And then you can teach them that stuff. Because before you can reach them, before you can teach them, you got to reach them first. I found that people, as well as kids, people don't care about what you know. You can have more degrees than a thermometer. They don't care. They don't care. They don't care about your book. They don't care. Man, I got a resume that goes all out this door. They don't care about none of that. People don't care what you know until they first know that you care. Some kind of way, at some level, and sometimes that means us going down a little bit to get up. To get to their level of something that they care about and try to find a way. And that's what our leaders do. Leaders, like, I love what you just said, Ms. Johnson. You said that who's driving this thing? Mm-hmm. Who's that passionate individual that's on fire about this stuff? I think it's Bridget. Bridget got me here for that. You know, remember, you know. Somebody asked me one day, when you have some free time, I said, I ain't got no free time. I ain't got no free time. I said, I was a daddy at 17. I ain't had no free time since 16. I mean, I'm amazed at people that's talking about they got free time. Where's that at? That free time. I said, I make time for stuff. I left my house today, so I'm going to support Bridget for 15 minutes. 15 minutes. I'm telling you. I told my wife she gets 15 today. And I'm thinking, I told her as soon as I sat down, I was trying to ease her into the 15. I said, you know, your most valuable asset is never your money, Bridget, it's your time. Because you don't know how much of that you got.
Right.
You know how much money you got, but you don't know how much time you got. I said, I guard my time. And then I sit down, talking, I was easing into that 15 minutes where I was going to say, I'm going to have to roll out of here.
I heard you. I check and see if I heard you. So I don't want to waste your time. That we got to make it more attractive.
Got to make it attractive.
Yeah, attractive. A regular location would be helpful, like a small, a library, room in a library, Surrey Hill, a place like that. I think they're available for free. Have Richard on top, but have a monthly chair that's responsible, so that one person doesn't have to carry the whole load. Share interest. By teaching something and giving your car, we can do a whole. One second on exploitation films. Look at all the black dynamite and all that. Tech talk. A whole bunch of us can benefit. And some of the brothers have good math tech skills. They can come and share that. It should be social, inform, and feed. But the food would have to come after and someplace away from the work.
Thank you.
Kathy, do you want to say something?
First of all, hi everyone. My name is Anna and I'm from the Caribbean. And I just want to say that I have been humbled today because, like Sienna said earlier, I'm from the West Indies and we don't carry that. We don't carry that history. It's not because we don't talk about it, and most of us don't know about it. So sitting here today and being able to hear everybody's stories and to be exposed to that, I think that has now piqued my interest. But now I can see that I feel like I will definitely try to be part of this community and just try to bring people together, because I'm guilty of walking around with, I guess I'm the luxury of walking around with rose-colored glasses. So when my friends say that they experience different things, I'm like, why does it bother you that much? Because I didn't have that experience. So now I have a greater appreciation for everybody else's experience, and I'm going to definitely try to help to bring this community together and to educate people on different things and just that I would just help to make this community better.
Awesome. Can I just suggest? Oh, sorry, go. No, you go.
Okay. I just wanted to speak because I just wanted to say, growing up in Australia, and for any of you people in here that have grown up in Australia, it was a different kettle of fish for us to actually grow up here. And not see any people of colour on the magazine covers, and not see people of colour on the TV stations, and not hear anything about anybody else other than the European people that actually lived here. There wasn't even a whole lot of talk about the Indigenous people of this country. The First Nations people of this country weren't spoken of in public sectors. So for us, identity was a huge freaking issue. Like, it's massive. It's even still massive for my children growing up today. Now, I see that as something that, as all of you as Black elders, of people who are on this land, performing being on this land, is something that you can give to the children here. Is by creating a community, is by showing, living, just being. I mean, one thing that I look at all the time is like the stories that we're telling today, just performing eating, just performing, sitting down, talking with each other, children playing in the park. those sorts of things, even from the Wakanda picnic that we had ages ago, the impact of that just on my girls and the friendships that they made on that day are really important, and I never had that. So I think I get really emotional. So you just have to let me be emotional. So I see it as food is always front and centre, and from my experience doing lots of, I do lots of community organisation out in Campbelltown in South West Sydney. So, and I have done lots of community engagement and activating community, and I always use lots of soft entry points. So lots of, come down, we really want you to be here. There's food. You can bring food, and we're gonna have music, and we're gonna dance, but then I'll have the moment where I always put in the education or the information that you need to know. It's just about getting people in the same space most of the time, because then they do the hard work for you, because they start talking to each other, and we are communal people when we're in the same space. We all come from oral traditions, and we come from people that I think reach out to each other and are pretty warm and enjoy each other. I know when I go back to Tennessee, that's the major difference that I've experienced is you know, just that being together is easy. You know, I mean, and that's what you have to offer a lot of the kids that grew up here, and they miss it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
Get that shot. Look, I think, and I'd really like to hear from John Gardner, who's a sculptor and has spent many years here working as a part of the community, a very important figure in growing up, because all of these people have been mentors to me. They've known me since I was like 10, 14 years of age. So, you know, I've grown up with this perception of not only Aboriginal Torres Strait, South Australian, South Sea Islander, but a black perspective in my life. And I love you all very dearly for that. I guess, look, the thing is, we need to get some sort of business model together, very basic. We've got the board, we've got the Black Collective. So what is your interest, whether it be basketball, entertainment, the arts, spiritual healing, and form working groups that can actually talk to that, and we can look at actioning that. With Australian South Sea Islanders, Port Jackson, yes, we use the word Australian because this year's our 25th year. I always go into the political rave when I speak, but this year is the 25th year since the Commonwealth recognised us as a distinct cultural group, Australian South Sea Islanders, who were forced migration, sugar slaves from the Pacific. So we adopt Australia, and I always try to correct and support people in using that term specifically because it's attached to government policy and legislation. So, but in terms of the model that we work from, we've got a lot of volunteers who are here today. You know, a lot of good people that we partner with, and it's all about community partnerships. And I think it's important that you have a self-determined board, a formal entity, but you work with people because we're human beings at the end of the day. And Diana's a fine experience coming from London, living there as a part of the West Indian culture. She gets it. And it's like, it's not about knowing your place, sister, is it? But it's about like-mindedness and understanding that self-determination is key for our people and how we move forward and express ourselves and create our own, I guess, contemporary culture, because that's what it is when we're, you know, in a multicultural society for some of us that aren't brought up traditionally. So maybe if I can suggest forming creative working groups that are attached to or that inform the Black Collective, and then we work together in looking at how we can tap into funding, how we can work. That's how SCPJ does it. We've got an academic advisory board, or a one-talk strategic team, of which Mari, who you met here, the tall white woman, the elder lady, and a number of other people, South Sea Islander mob, Aboriginal mob, Torres Strait, but they advise us. When we need them, we call on them, and we work on programs. And what does that look like? Vanessa Lee, who's here, and she's also my supervisor on my master's by research. And hey, no pressure. But either way, Vanessa, has come in to support, and I wanted to flag here tonight or today, the Black Collective could potentially work with. We've been funded by something, Activate the Night Gambling. We've got another grant. The first grant. So I want to try and maybe we can incorporate some of that culture as a part of this funding to actually create a bit more of a momentum. And it's right here in Sydney where we are. Because we're not all out west, sister. And that's the biggest thing that we find challenging here is us locals in this region coming together. How do we do that? How do we come together? We're always having parties, we can pull each other together for that. And kai at my house after this, by the way. I've got a curry on the stove if anyone wants to come over. But at the same time, let's show the councils, the cities of Sydney, and always working with First Nations perspectives. That's the only way we're going to get through this together as people of colour in this country. A united front is what we need today, right? It's not divide and conquer, it's not stay in your box. It's about how do we work and how do we learn from First Nations mob. So this festival is going to be led by Aboriginal, we got funded for Sugar Fest, for Pyramid Park, Aboriginal, Torres Strait, South Sea, and whatever other black fella wants to join. And we come together and we share our stories. And I'm thinking, because it is not just me thinking, we discussed it, a sugar shack in Pyramid Park where people get up and yarn, and poetry and spoken word, but let's share that. Let's show this goddamn town. Yeah, we ain't going nowhere. And this is about Activate Sydney by Night. So what we pitched to the City of Sydney is that this could be the first of an annual cultural calendar event. The 25th of August is Recognition Day by the Commonwealth of Australian South Sea Islanders, and this is what they funded us specifically for. But we can build on that, and we're extending an opportunity for everyone here to get involved. Yeah? So let's do it. Let's blacken it up.
Awesome.
I don't need a microphone, I don't think. I just wanted to say that I remember when Vivid was one static projection on one side of the Opera House.
Yes.
And that was only, I think, 2008, 2009. So this could be the beginning of something very large indeed.
So the Sugar Shack, the concept for the Sugar Shack was about just like an old shack, a slave shack, whatever. We know creative people who can design. I don't know if Bar's still here. Is Bar still around? But people like that who have that black perspective about what design looks like for us. Yeah. I don't know if you know anymore, but we could do something like that, and then project imagery of slavery and the 1967 referendum, black theatre, just really educate people on the diversity that exists within this whole region, which we consider a black precinct, really. When you look at Tranby, when you look at, black theatre, locations.
Well, look, in Toronto, it's Caravana is celebrating every year, and that's been going on since 1960.
Yeah.
And it's one of the biggest festivals now in North America.
Yeah.
And
so, we can build on this.
I think the approach to the celebration is of actually getting people together, galvanizing people. Then underneath that, as this lovely person says, you
We can start off very simple, and we must start from the basis of trust. You know, and that's our biggest downfall, is that we lose faith in each other. And fear kicks in of the unknown, and we create all this shit in our heads about, oh, but it's not really that. It's just, you might be having a bad day. You know what I mean? So we need to trust. And I think what Carol, that's it, and they are testament to this. I'd also like to acknowledge Kathy Utok, who's here from the Indigenous Peoples Organisation, the chair. And I don't know if you want to say anything about that, but this woman is a powerhouse. She runs a national organisation virtually. You know, of course she's got her consulting. Did you want to talk about that? Sorry, I know I'm getting, but I think people need to know who's in the room. Is it too much? Yeah. We acknowledge you.
Thanks, Amelda. I'm really here to provide solidarity with people who were forcibly removed. I'm not, my parents are both Aboriginal. Laurie, Bachelor, doctors from Queensland.
Is that working?
I think so. Prior to that, there was intermarriage with consent, but prior to that, there was also forced violence, sexual violence on women in my family that resulted in the skin colour that I've got. And I know that all of you also have that violence behind you, that dispossession. It's something that we share. It's another arm of colonisation, removal of people for economic profit, for a few, and the forced dispossession. So really I'm just here to provide solidarity, happy to get involved, and congratulations to Imelda and everybody else who's been involved. It's really inspiring to hear everyone's stories here today.
Thank you.
John, did you want to share something just quickly? No? Okay. Andy, you wanted to finish off with something?
Well, it's to keep the focus, keep the focus on youth as well as renewing and building. Because I remember when my son, I had a gathering with my son, and a Kuzma, who was African American, was there, and he was just upstairs playing around and things like that. But what he took from having that man there, and I thought, oh, if only I had time, I wanted to gather all the black basketballs because I was trying to put them all, because if we could have things gathering, just for dinners and things like that, so that children and their children would just be around, not for them, but just so that they can be around where kids are around. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and just in conclusion, again, I just want to say thank you to my board. You guys are amazing, and this would not have happened without you. I want to say special thanks to our presenters, our speakers. Can I get a round of applause? Amazing. And I also want to say thank you to each and every one of you for taking the time today to be here with us and to share your presence and all that you are. And what we're going to do next is take your suggestions. We're going to continue the dialogue as we're developing the TBC. But we have a sign-in sheet that's going around, so I encourage you to sign it. It's not a contract. We just want to know who you are, and if you're willing to put your hand up and get involved in any way, we would really appreciate that. At the back of the room, there's some food. It's free. However, we would love a donation from the heart for the community, because these things aren't put on by osmosis. It takes time and money. So if we can get your support, that would be great. And also, if you could stick around and help us kind of stack some chairs, since we're a community, we're going to do this together, because we actually have to depart by 4. But we'll be around if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you to everyone.